Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Permission to speak?
Yes, sir.
This sure does feel like deja vu all over again. I'm still confused as to what we're doing here. My voters still tell me they need affordable housing and medication. They still need better jobs and education, and they still need safer streets. And still, to this day, I have not heard from one voter saying we need to ban gender-affirming health care. Why are some members of this body so obsessed with other people's private parts? My Republican colleagues must know what they are doing is wrong, because so many of them kept leaving the room, and very few of them were willing to speak on the record. Privately, they say they know this bill is wrong. Publicly, they say this bill is about rights. But whose rights? The right of parents to care for their children? Obviously not, because this bill says the government knows better than the parents. The right of doctors to practice medicine? Obviously not, because this bill says the government knows better than the doctors. The right of youth to grow up in a world that accepts them for who they are? Obviously not, because this bill says the government knows the youth better than they know themselves. This bill advances the government's right to say it doesn't care about the public, 71% of whom oppose this. This bill advances the government's right to say it knows more than the entire medical community, which overwhelmingly supports gender-affirming care. This bill advances the government's right to shame our youth into committing suicide. There is a 56% reduction in suicide from using a person's preferred pronouns and a 73% reduction from gender-affirming health care. I feel like I have to ask my Republican colleagues if they have asked themselves the famous question, what would Jesus do? One of the most important axioms in Jewish law is kavod habriot, which means honoring human dignity. The Talmud goes so far as to say that to honor human dignity is so important, it trumps any other law with which it conflicts. For some individuals, gender-affirming care is the only thing that will allow them to live with dignity. And to deny them access is to deny them their dignity and cost them their lives. Therefore, this law is contrary to biblical law and is opposed by every Jewish organization and faith leader in Kentucky. So once again, ask yourselves, what would Jesus do? But let me share my personal story. I know what it's like to struggle with bodily development. I didn't hit puberty until age 17. I stand 6 feet 2 inches today, but I started high school at 4 foot 8 inches and 98 pounds. I know what it's like to be bullied and abused by my peers, to be stuffed in a locker and held out a window by my ankles. I know what it's like to think deep in your core there is something wrong with you. The standard of care now would be to provide hormones. That was not the standard back then. It was to allow nature to take its course. What the world didn't know then and doesn't know until this very moment is I almost made a decision that would not have me standing before you here today. Thank God I didn't. And this is coming from a cisgender, gender-conforming man. I identified then and identify now with the body I have today, but not the body I had as an underdeveloped teenager. I can't imagine the agony our trans youth endure, which will now be forced upon them by a government. And I plead to them once again to be patient, because love and reason will eventually prevail, even if hate and bigotry carry the day today. Some of you are here today, and I need you to know that I hear you, I see you, and I love you, and I know that you are perfect just the way you are. And to my Republican colleagues, I beg you to do the right thing, because proper treatment will save lives. You often tell me you think liberals are hysterical, and I keep hearing on conservative media that you want to own the libs. Well, you want to own the libs? Own this lib. Prove me wrong. I don't think we can stop this bill, but you can prove me wrong and show me there is no increase in suicide. Let's get the record of how many students request non-conforming pronouns and how many students attempt or commit suicide. Make me come back to this body in a few years and apologize on this floor for being hysterical. Mr. Speaker, I filed House Floor Amendment 4, which would simply report those two details. This was filed in proper form in a timely manner before the committee substitute, which was just introduced this afternoon and passed minutes ago, but my amendment has been resubmitted to the clerk. Because of that, I move to suspend the rules and adopt House Floor Amendment 4.
Gentlemen, the suspension of the rules is not for adoption. It is for the purpose of allowing you to act on it. So your motion, actually, I'll restate it for you, is to suspend the rules for the purpose of allowing action on House Floor Amendment 4. Motion is non-debatable, requires a constitutional majority of 51. Roll call is open for your vote. Those in favor of suspension of the rules, vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Roll call is open. Clerk will take the roll. Being 19 members voting aye, vote falls short of the 51 required for suspension of the rules. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will go to bed tonight with a heavy heart but a clear conscience.
Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson 44 for discussion of the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I speak on the bill?
Yes, ma'am.
I've been sitting here listening and also watching. I don't know how many of you paid attention to the young adults that were sitting in front of us. I watched their faces through the discussion. I can only wonder what is going through their minds. I can only wonder if they're thinking about their friends that do not have the courage to speak to their parents, their guardians, because of the way they feel. So, when we leave these chambers today, all I think about is how many of these individuals, or if any of my colleagues and their children or grandchildren, will they be here this time next year? My mom used to say every year there's a number, somebody's gone. So I'm saying to you, I want you to think as you begin to vote, can you actually consciously vote in good conscience and think about the people in your lives that it might affect? And think about where they will be this time next year. Thank you.